You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
I'm Dan Zarzana.
Let the journey begin. This episode of The Hero's Journey is made possible by generous support from listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/heroesjourney to make a single donation or become a monthly sponsor and earn access to bonus audio and video content and vote for the subject of our next episode.
Thank you to all our patrons, especially our two demigod-level patrons, and John Peterson Jr.
We really appreciate your support, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you.
So we've decided to stop numbering our episodes for a couple of reasons. One being, we want people to enjoy the subject of the episode and not worry about having to listen in order, because our episodes are timeless. They're evergreen. And because Apple Podcasts is beating you down for putting episode numbers in your episodes.
Oh.
So this episode, how do we say this now? You wrote it down in the script.
I put an alternative script.
Welcome to this month's episode, 7.
Inflicted on theater audiences on September 22nd, 1995. 7 is director David Fincher's second feature film, and it probably saved his career.
Aye. I can't wait for this holiday season when we can cover the sequel, A Very 7 Christmas.
Can you imagine?
I don't know, but they're going to shoot it in suburban Chicago, right next to the Griswold's house.
Yep. Upon release, 7 spent 4 weeks as the number one film in theaters, which was not a difficult task, considering that it opened opposite Showgirls.
An equally horrifying movie. 7 killed at the box office, ultimately earning a worldwide lifetime gross of $327 million against its $33 million budget.
7 was nominated for just one Academy Award.
That's criminal.
For Best Film Editing, and it did not win.
In retrospect, the Academy should be ashamed of itself, because this was an incredible film. I mean, Silence of the Lambs won Best Picture. This was at least as good a movie as Silence of the Lambs.
Wow.
Okay, enough prelim. Grab your badge and your flashlight, and let's investigate 7.
Act 1 begins with the world of Common Day, where we see our main character in their status quo normal life, in what I feel is an excellent opening sequence.
So good.
We are introduced to Detective William Somerset. He is a methodical, precise man. He's got all of his accoutrements lined up on his dresser.
Yeah.
You can tell the care and precision that he puts into his work based on how he dresses for work. He arrives at a crime scene. The corpse of the crime scene is a cameo played by the screenwriter of the film, Andrew Kevin Walker.
Yes.
Somerset is 7 days from retirement,
right.
And it is obvious by the way he is treated by the other detective on scene that the precinct can't wait for Somerset to get out of their hair.
Yeah,
They don't like the way he investigates crimes.
No pun intended. That other guy's a dick. He looks at the refrigerator and he asks, did the kid see it? Did the kid witness the murder? And the other cop is like, what does it matter if the kid saw the murder? Because it's, they clearly know who did it. It's already a closed case as far as the other guy's concerned. And here is Somerset bringing up some horrible detail that's going to muddle up their investigation. I will say I'm pleased that you identified the correct title character of the film. As we know, the title 7 refers to the 7 letters of Somerset's first name, William.
You're probably right.
Yeah. That was in the commentary track. I'm pretty sure that's why.
Yeah, they cleared that up for you?
Oh, and to tease
That's
the tidbits, good. You mentioned the accoutrement laid out on his dresser as he's getting ready for work. There's a cutout of a looks like a piece of paper that it has a cabbage rose on it, and that's from an alternate beginning that we'll talk about in the tidbits.
During this initial crime scene investigation, a young and impulsive Detective Mills, played by Brad Pitt, arrives on scene, and this is his meeting with Somerset. The two of them are now partners for the rest of the film, and that's what I saw. What?
I wouldn't say they're partners. He's shadowing Somerset to take over the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
That brings us to Call to Adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. Mills has a hero's journey too, and we get to see his ordinary world in a very brief, very efficient scene that also includes his call to adventure. We see Mills in his new apartment with his wife, Tracy. They've just moved to this city from somewhere rural because she mentions, I thought we moved away to get away from tractor pulls when you hear the truck backing up in the street. They're still unpacking. And the call here is the summons to a new crime scene, which turns out to be John Doe's first kill. Mills receives a literal call. The phone rings, and while we don't hear what's being said on the other end, we see him writing what we assume is the address of the crime scene on his hand. And it's a great character moment there because, maybe he usually keeps a notebook by the bed. Maybe he doesn't. But I get the feeling that Mills is the kind of guy who wrote things on his hand in high school and that he's sort of still that high school guy. But it's the first of many quirks that we see in Detective Mills.
Yeah. I liked how Mills getting dressed for work sort of mirrors, kind of opposite Somerset. His shirt is wrinkled.
Yeah.
His tie, he just pulls off of a hanger. He's got a bunch of pre-tied neckties.
He's got crusties in his eyes that his wife has to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a slob.
Yeah. Do you feel, before we move on to the next segment, do you feel that Somerset is the hero, or do you think that Mills and Somerset equally share the role throughout the film? I feel like Somerset is the clear hero, and Mills, as you said, has his own journey, but...
I agree. They share a lot of screen time, and Brad Pitt is very charismatic in that role, but the movie opens and closes on Somerset, which is a clear indication.
Right.
And I think Somerset has the more powerful and clearer character arc. I don't think Mills changes all that much during the course of the film.
And that's kind of the point.
Yeah, agreed.
So, moving on to refusal of the call, where the hero refuses the call to adventure. Sometimes this energy is expressed from within the hero and sometimes from without. As Somerset and Mills are sitting in their captain's office, the captain played by R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah, so great.
Somerset tells the captain that he doesn't want this case because he can tell that this is the start of something big.
Right.
He's got 6 days left on the job. He doesn't want this to be his last duty. So that is refusal from within.
Yeah.
He is also foisting a refusal from without on Detective Mills when he tells the captain, and Mills isn't ready for this case.
Right. That's exactly what I had.
It's a very simple refusal of the call, very fast scene.
Very direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also sets up the antagonism that Mills and Somerset share or express to one another sort of throughout the film until they become... What am I trying to say? Until they
really partner up.
Yeah.
That brings us to meeting with the mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. There's so much mentorship in this movie, and it comes from many places, and I love it. I think the scene that holds the place of the meeting with the mentor scene in the movie it's the captain who acts as the first mentor. There's a scene in Somerset's office, soon to be Mills's office, as we can tell by the guy scraping the name off of Somerset's door.
Right.
And another tease for the tidbits, there's a great story about who that guy is. Anyway, the captain tells Somerset about the Greed murder. A high-end defense attorney has been maimed and killed in his office, and the word greed was painted in blood on the floor. And Somerset basically says, well, good luck to Mills, and goes back to typing his report. And the captain says...
Don't you feel it? Don't you feel that feeling? You're not going to be a cop anymore.
That's the whole idea.
I don't think you're leaving. Hell, you can't leave all this.
And then the captain, as he leaves, does this very Columbo style, oh, here's this little piece of evidence from your first murder, and it's bits of plastic that were found in his stomach. They were fed to him. In this scene, the captain is trying to teach Somerset about who he really is. He's saying, you can't quit. You're not a quitter. This is who you are. This is in your blood. And again, Somerset deflects him.
Right.
Then Somerset tries to become the mentor to Mills. But he's not being a mentor. He's really just trying to abdicate responsibility of the case and hand it off to Mills. So we have this great sequence. You never see a sequence like this in a psychological thriller. He goes to the library to do research, and the cops are playing poker upstairs, and Air on a G-String by Bach is playing, and it's this gorgeous, beautiful scene, and Somerset's doing all this deep research on the 7 deadly sins, and he makes copies and folds it up and puts it in an envelope and leaves it on Mills's desk. And I just want to point out this part of the movie. You know, Fincher is a great storyteller. He knows how to keep an audience engaged, but he's also like an artist level filmmaker. All those shots of the books coming off the shelves, those really like shallow depth of field shots, and the way he shoots the way it's being Xerox copied. I mean, that sequence is beautiful. What a weird and beautiful sequence.
Yeah, it is my favorite sequence of the film.
Yeah? It's gorgeous. Okay, anyway, so there's that mentorship moment of him passing on the information to Mills. And then in one of my favorite scenes in the movie, you see Brad Pitt in his car, like frustrated, trying to understand all the stuff that he's given him. And he throws the book against the windshield and he says,
Dante, goddamn poetry writing piece of shit.
and then a uniformed cop delivers Cliff Notes.
Yep.
Which is like, oh man, now you know who this guy was in high school, right? Not only was he the guy that wrote on his hand, he was the Cliff Notes guy. All that said, I think Mills is the main mentor in this movie.
What?
Yeah, I think Mills is the mentor. His character believes that being a cop makes a difference, and he challenges Somerset's fatalism over and over and over again to effect in this film. And there's a great scene. There's a great scene much later in the film, out of sequence. Mills and Somerset are at the bar, and they've gone through, I think, 3 or 4 of the murders at this point, and they're sitting there having a beer, and Somerset's berating him for being hopeful and saying, this is gonna go poorly. However this ends, it's not going to be satisfying. It's going to be bad. Mills says,
I don't think you're quitting because you believe these things you say. I don't. I think you want to believe them because you're quitting. You want me to agree with you and you want me to say, yeah, you're right. It's all f***ed up. It's a f***ing mess. We should all go live in a f***ing log cabin.
And then a great line reading by Brad Pitt that I imitate.
You do.
Often. Mills says,
But I won't. I won't say that. I don't agree with you. I do not. I can't.
I love that scene because it's as inexperienced as Mills is in comparison to Somerset. He's basically saying your philosophy is invalid, and the way you live your life is proof that it's invalid, and I don't believe that you believe this.
Yeah, very good. Wow.
There's a lot of mentor in there, and I realize I talked for a long time, but I think mentorship is at the heart of this movie in a lot of ways.
Yes. It comes from a surprising place, as you've just illustrated. I didn't really see it that way. I was watching the old cop teach the new cop, and those moments were moments of mentorship.
Yeah.
So, but good on you for thinking outside the box.
What's in the box?
Next segment, Crossing the Threshold. This is where the hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. Now, you've already talked about the library scene, but that's what I thought was Somerset's Crossing the Threshold. He puts effort into researching the 7 deadly sins. And yes, he's making copies and a reading list for Mills. But I think he knows he's going to end up being involved through the whole thing. He's already said, I don't want any part of this, but he's taking part in this by going to that library. And that's what I thought was Crossing the Threshold. So I'm interested to hear what your perspective is on that segment.
We haven't really disagreed straight up for a while. We've been pretty in sync the last couple episodes with a few minor variations, but I disagree. I think there's a pretty clear crossing the threshold moment.
What is it?
And it comes from an unexpected place. It comes from Tracy, Mills's wife. So Mills comes into the office the next day, and it's Somerset is still sitting at the desk, and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me move." And he, moves his things to his little desk, and Mills sits down and he sets his stuff out, and he's kind of organizing his desk, and then you see him sort of slip the Cliff Notes into a drawer.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep that from Somerset.
All right.
The phone rings, and it's Tracy, and she wants to speak to Somerset, and she invites him to dinner. And you can tell that Mills is sort of annoyed about this. So the reason why I think this dinner scene is a crossing of the threshold, other than the fact that this is the first time the two of them physically cross a threshold together as they walk into Mills's apartment, is that during this dinner, they talk about relationships, they talk about the city, and then afterward, for the first time, they start working on the case together for real. This scene is so great. And my favorite moment of this scene is, they're working on the case. They're going through the photos. They're talking about it. He gets up to go get another beer, and he offers Somerset one, but Somerset asks for wine instead. Mills brings him a glass tumbler filled to the brim with red wine. Like he has never poured a glass of wine.
Right, exactly.
And the best part is that Somerset doesn't even notice. He takes it, puts it down. They're still working. And then when the train rumbles the apartment again,
Right.
he picks up the glass.
And then he notices it.
Morgan Freeman does this double take. And he looks at the guy and he looks at it again like, did that guy pour me a tumbler full of... It's just so great. Anyway, I identified this as the crossing of the threshold because this is the moment when he identifies the one thing in the greed scene, right? The wife's eyes have been circled in blood on this photograph. And right at that moment, he and Mills leave the apartment late at night to go interview a witness together. This is the first action they're taking as detectives together to go solve this crime. And even though Somerset just insisted moments earlier in the movie that he's leaving at the end of the week, we can tell right now that he's invested.
Okay, nice. I had a 3D experience watching this dinner scene. The first moment the train goes by and it shakes the apartment, I had a helicopter fly low over the building, and it shook the building. It shook this apartment.
At the time you were watching that
At the exact same time that was happening.
No.
So it was just really surreal, weird moment, and it was kind of awesome.
Wow.
And it'll probably never happen that way again.
No, that's awesome.
Okay, that is a really good crossing the first threshold. I didn't see it that way because they've already been at a crime scene together, but you're right. They weren't really investigating together at the gluttony scene.
Yeah, this is their first partner moment.
Somerset actually sends Mills out to go knock on doors and interview
Such a power play.
neighbors.
Such a power play. Go talk to the neighbors.
Right.
And later-
and Mills is like, I'm a detective. I did the whole beat cop knock on doors thing. I'm a detective now. You don't send me out of the crime scene.
I've been guarding a Taco Bell.
Exactly. Great. That concludes Act 1. Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Also a name with 7 letters.
That's right.
What have you been reading, watching, playing lately? Anything? Anything good?
I got sucked back into Critical Role. So...
For real?
My reading.
Are you still on the first campaign?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I'm on episode 90, and I started listening
Oh, wow. Okay.
like in the early fall of last year.
Mm-hmm. You made a lot of progress.
It continues to astound me. One of the characters died and was resurrected. He was the funny guy, and he came back with an incredible twist that I did not see coming. And it was one of the most fantastic moments of improv acting I've ever witnessed. I continue to be astounded by the creativity of that cast and inspired by it.
Right.
I finished an audio book that probably should be called a novella, but they released it in hardcover, called Elevation by Stephen King.
You talked about that last episode.
Okay, so that's how long it's been since I read a book. I finished, in the reading and playing category, I finished reading the Dungeon Master's Guide, the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide by Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
Because I am preparing to Dungeon Master a campaign.
Oh, yeah?
Which I am...
Can I get in on that?
I am resolved for you to play in it.
I'm just kidding.
I will NPC your character while you were at work, but we will make this work. And thanks to a life of 2 children, I have watched half of the first episode of Bosch season 5.
What?
That's it.
Dang.
And I'm up to speed on Game of Thrones, but I've been able to watch a half an episode of Bosch. Ask me how I feel about that.
How do you feel about that?
I'm pissed about it. I'm resentful. I resent my children for stopping me from being able to watch Bosch.
Wow. Okay.
And I think it shows in the way I've treated them. So I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of it, but that's how it is.
Jeez. Well, in keeping with the theme of this episode, that was dark. Yikes.
How about you, Dan? What have you been watching, reading, playing?
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
Yeah, pretty much nothing. No, I did not complete a single book since our last recording.
Well, it's only been 2 weeks. I guess that's the other thing.
I am almost to the end of a book called Decide by Stephen McClatchy. This is a book largely talks about, a lot of it is kind of time management. He says that everything that we do in our lives falls into one of 2 categories. These are tasks that either prevent pain or tasks that are for gain.
That's legit.
Prevent pain tasks are things like doing chores, taking out the trash, emptying the dishwasher, answering emails at work, returning voicemails, doing things that somebody that either will cause a problem in some way if you don't do it. Like your trash will just build up, and your apartment and your house starts to smell.
Right.
If you don't return that voicemail, or if you don't write that report for your boss, there will be negative consequences.
Okay.
Gain tasks are things that you want to do for yourself. You're not accountable to anybody but you to do these. These are things like exercising, or, bucket list stuff. I don't know, writing a book, or watching a movie, or just things that you want to do because you want to do them.
Okay.
So I've just been kind of thinking about my life and categorizing things into those two categories. He also says that while you cannot put off prevent pain tasks, you need to mix in gain tasks. If you spend your entire life doing prevent pain tasks, you're going to feel like you're on a treadmill to nowhere. Because prevent pain tasks, you don't permanently cross them off your list. They just go back to the bottom of the list until they bubble up to the top. You always have to do the laundry.
Right.
You always have to take your car to the mechanic.
Right.
Stuff like that. So it's been interesting. I've been thinking about what are my gain tasks that I've been doing. And I think this podcast is one of them. One of the major ones, if not the major one. So that's what I've been reading. I'm almost done with that. I think I'll probably be done in the next week.
I've been
week or
waffling
so.
about whether to read that or not. I just feel like I don't have the time. This is a slow burn, stupid joke. I'm sorry.
In terms of watching, I've only watched 2 episodes of the new season of Bosch.
Oh, you're better than me, but I'm still disappointed in you.
I am caught up on Game of Thrones, and as of last night, I am mostly caught up on all of the Marvel movies.
Oh.
I watched Ant-Man and the Wasp earlier this week on Netflix. And then 2 nights ago, my wife and I went and saw Captain Marvel in the theater. And then last night, we saw Avengers Endgame.
Okay, so you made up for the book stuff with a lot of catching up in the movie world. I feel like that's legit.
Right. Yeah. Which was good. It was nice to get out and do something out in that wasn't here in this apartment or at work.
Which was your favorite of Marvel, Ant-Man, or Endgame?
They're all so different. Ant-Man and the Wasp is a comedy. Did you see the first Ant-Man?
No,
you're not into the Marvel thing. Okay, so
I want to be, but I haven't.
So Ant-Man and the Wasp is a funny movie. It's a superhero movie, but it's got a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff.
Okay.
Captain Marvel was a much more traditional superhero origin story, but it's set in the 90s, so there's a lot of cool references to 90s
told me that.
stuff.
I'm going to see
the soundtrack is all like everything we listened to in high school.
Do I have to see the other ones to enjoy Captain Marvel, or can I just hop into the world there?
There's a lot of this Marvel Cinematic Universe is 22 films long.
See, I think that's what's so intimidating to me is I feel like, well, there's no way I'm possibly going to catch up. Those are not going to be the next 22 films. I'll see 22 films this year, and they're certainly not all going to be the Marvel ones. So I feel like I can't drop in and watch a good one. I have to start at, whatever, Thor 2 that I haven't seen and go all the way to...
I think you could see Captain Marvel. You're going to miss a lot of the references and a lot of the humor that's in it.
Okay. So Danny went to the movies. That's awesome.
Yeah, went to the movies.
We're going to take a short break, refill our water glasses, and we'll be back with Act 2. Act 2 begins with tests, allies, and enemies, aka the Road of Trials. Now in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. I think the allies and enemies are pretty straightforward here. Somerset's allies are Mills and the cops, and John Doe is the enemy. It's a clear-cut cops and serial killer story. This is an investigation, so the crime scenes are the tests. These are the milestones during the detective's pursuit of John Doe.
Agreed.
The first murder turns out to be gluttony. They find the obese man face down in his plate of spaghetti. And as we've already talked about, Somerset tries to bail before they've made any progress in the case. He just says, I'm out. I can't, this is not going to end. I can't do this. And that's a fail. That's a failed test. And then the captain shows him the strips of plastic in the victim's stomach, and Somerset goes back to the crime scene. And he opens the fridge and he sees those scars on the floor where the strips of plastic have been stripped away. And he pulls the fridge out and he sees the word gluttony written in grease. And this is the first break in the case. This is a passed test. And Somerset immediately knows this is a serial killer at work, and he's using the 7 deadly sins. It's just, that's one of the first and only successes he has in this case. I just want to talk about an acting moment. Morgan Freeman opens the refrigerator. He's just looking in the fridge to see if he can see anything, where the plastic might have come from that this guy was force-fed. And he's closing the refrigerator door, and he looks down and he stops, and he sees this thing, and he opens the door back up so that the light can shine on it. Those things are so hard to pull off as an actor. You're like, okay, I'm looking in the fridge, and then I'm just going to close. Oh, and look, and there it is.
Act casual.
And it's also something that it's hard to buy if you're writing the script. He just looks and happens to see it by accident, and the actor has to close that gap. I don't know if there's anybody better at this stuff than Morgan Freeman. He's got 2 or 3 of these moments in this movie, including a big one at the end, that are a testament to his skill and craft as an actor. Okay, the next test comes at the Greed crime scene, in which high-profile defense attorney Eli Gould was murdered. Somerset has identified the one thing, this detail that leads to all the other details, and it's that his wife's eyes have been circled in blood at the crime scene on this photograph. And that leads them to the upside-down painting, which leads them to the fingerprints on the wall behind it that spell out, "Help me." Mm-hmm. This is a passed test. That he identifies that trail of clues. And then the fingerprints turn out they're not from the victim. So the cops, minus Somerset, assume that it must belong to the killer. Somerset's like, this doesn't sound like the guy. I don't believe it. And then they ID the fingerprints as belonging to this super low-life drug addict, violent criminal who also happens to be a client of Eli Gould's. So then there's the one problem I have with this movie is they have this big SWAT team sequence where the captain is briefing the SWAT team as they're going through the hallway, which doesn't make any sense because this would be sensitive information that they would get in a briefing room. But whatever, they're walking and talking, they're briefing the cops, they get in the cars, they're all peeling out, and there's it's like the scene from Silence of the Lambs where they all close in on the wrong house, right? So they close in and they got their flashlights and their guns, and John C. McGinley is in full aggro mode, and he's so great in every movie that he's in. And I didn't buy it. I think they would have sent a couple cops and a couple backup cops to knock on the guy's door. I just didn't buy the whole SWAT team. So I think it was injected. This moment was injected in the movie because it needed a action movie moment, so it wouldn't continue to be a quiet murder mystery. But I don't buy that's how they would have a SWAT team. I just don't buy it.
I would like to hear from maybe a law enforcement professional on whether or not that was an authentic reaction or not. I think that would be interesting to know.
Fair enough. So then I think there's one more test, and that's the Sloth murder scene where the SWAT team is there, and they're leading them through this absolutely disgusting tenement building. I mean, just water damage, peeling walls. I mean, the set design and the production design in this movie is unbelievable. You are so uncomfortable all the time. Yeah. From the gluttony scene onward, it is just, your skin is crawling with how horrible this is. And then they come to this room festooned with these tree-shaped car air fresheners. And, all the actors are playing that it smells disgusting in this room. You can smell that room when you're watching this movie. You can smell the sweet scent of those air fresheners and the rotting flesh. I mean, it is a visceral experience. And then there's that one terrifying moment when we're close on the victim in the bed.
Yep.
And then California, played by John C. McGinley.
It's a great name.
Oh, he's so good. He's examining the scene, and the body takes a breath. And I jump. Even I've seen this movie dozens of times. I jump out of my seat. That movie in the theater, that was the scariest thing I've ever seen. That was terrifying.
Apparently, the actors were not told that was going to happen too. So.
Oh, brilliant. So they fail again because they're one step behind John Doe. And then they fail again when Mills shoos away the photographer on the scene, and we find out later that was John Doe.
Right.
So major fail. So I see that as the end of tests.
All right, so we'll move on to Approach to the Inmost Cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden. After the failure of the raid on Vincent's apartment, Vincent turns out to be the sloth victim.
Right.
And the revelation that he is not John Doe. Mills and Somerset have to then back up a bit and try to figure out, how do we identify the killer? And Somerset has a revelation. Library records can be bought from the FBI if you've got the right contact.
Can we talk about the scene that leads to that? Because it's got some great dialogue moments that I totally want to cut in. they're having this argument, right? Mills is saying that John Doe is obviously insane, and Somerset's saying, no, he's very methodical and rational.
Yeah.
And Mills says,
Right now, he's probably dancing around in his grandma's panties. Yeah, rubbing himself in peanut butter. Ooh.
and Somerset's like, this guy's methodical, he's exacting, and worst of all, patient.
Yeah.
And then Mills says,
He's a nutbag. Just because he's got a library card doesn't make him Yoda.
and that's what inspires Somerset to call his FBI connection.
Right. Yeah, good point. So the two of them rush to a pizza joint with the cash they have in their wallets
Right.
and pay off an FBI contact to be fed a list of names and addresses of people who have checked out books on the 7 deadly sins from the library. This reveals the home address of John Doe.
But there's another great scene.
Okay.
That is probably the only comic relief moment between now and the end of the movie.
Uh-huh.
Right, they're in the car and they're reading through the list and they're trying to figure out who's the, and he goes, oh, there's a list. And so Mills is reading, he goes, of human bondage, not what you
you're
think.
thinking.
And then he goes, the Marquis de Sade. That was so hilarious. That pretty much brings us to the ordeal. So let's read our deal or ordeal cards.
Okay.
Dan wrote that my ordeal would be chasing John Doe. That's what I chose.
Yep.
I wrote a longer
And you
version
wrote,
of
you
chasing
wrote an
John
essay
Doe.
here.
Sorry.
Good God, man.
I haven't
John
had-
Doe takes a shot at Somerset and Mills, and defectives and detectives give chase, culminating in Mills with a gun to his head. So very specific there.
Dan's making fun of me. So the ordeal is the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. So yeah, they get the address, they knock on John Doe's door, and then a man in a trench coat appears in the hallway, and he drops his groceries and he fires at them. And they hit the deck and it's glass breaking and it begins this insane chase sequence. And they chase who we now know is John Doe through these amazing downtown LA buildings and out into the street in the rain. Finally, John Doe ambushes Mills in the alley and puts a gun to his head. And John Doe doesn't say a word. And there's this incredible shot looking up the barrel of the gun at the dark, blurry figure of John Doe.
Right.
And then he pulls the gun away suddenly, and there's this whoosh in the soundtrack. What a stunning piece of cinema.
Yeah.
And how wet is it in that alley, by the way? And like you said,
It's been raining for 4 days.
Yeah, like you said earlier, they never name the city in the film, but Andrew Kevin Walker has said many times that this movie is his love letter to New York City.
Love letter?
Yeah, he lived in New York for a brief period and hated it.
Yes.
And we know it was shot in LA, but this heavy rain really helps to put us somewhere else. It doesn't feel like LA at all. All right, that's what I had for the ordeal.
Totally agree. Let's move on to the ultimate boon. Boon. Or what Christopher Vogler interprets as reward. Seizing the sword, as you like to pick up on that one subsection of that chapter. Having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. Following the chase of John Doe, Somerset and Mills return to the apartment. Mills wants to just bust right on in there. They've got probable cause now, right? He shot at him. But Somerset knows that if they bust in there now, whatever they find in there, they can't use against him as in evidence.
Right.
So Somerset is encouraging patience. We've got to do this right.
We can't share that we illegally tapped FBI information to find this address.
Yes.
Like we cannot prove why we're here.
Yeah, what brought us to this door? So Mills pretends, all right, you're right. We'll go get a more, and then busts open that door with his boot. Bam,
Boom.
And what I thought was a funny moment. Somerset is now pissed off,
Right.
and Mills is like, how much money we got left over? So now they're gonna go pay a homeless person to make up this story,
Right.
that would have led Mills and Somerset up to the apartment. You can tell that Somerset is a little uncomfortable with this. He's not
Yeah.
taking part of it. He's standing at the end of the alley while Mills and a uniformed officer are taking the statement of this homeless woman. And then they are now able to go into the apartment, where there is a wealth of evidence and information. Photographs of the victims that we've already seen, the hand of the sloth victim that John Doe chopped off and used to paint "Help Me" in fingerprints behind the greed victim's painting.
Proof that all these crimes are connected.
Stuff. Yes, absolutely. And hundreds of handwritten notebooks that I'm sure any psychiatrist and psychologist would love to get their hands on. All of the information that they could possibly want is in this apartment.
Yeah, and I would say, most importantly, there's a receipt to Wild Bill's leather shop, which is really the only thing they can use to move forward, because there are no fingerprints and nothing identifying who this guy is.
Exactly.
But they find that receipt and they know where to go next.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of Act 2, which means it's time to take a break and have a beverage.
What's in the bottle?
What's in the bottle? Is it 7 bottles of something? This bag has outlasted.
The bag is outlasting my microphone stand, which I'm going to have to
It is
get
a
a new one.
tumbler full of red wine. No, I haven't really opened it yet. Lodi Old Vine Zinfandel. It is the 7 deadly Zins. It has
Lodi.
the Lodi. What'd I say, Lodi? Oh, Lodi, California, of course. Greed, envy, vanity, sloth, gluttony, and lust. Oh, they have vanity instead of pride. Sinful indeed. This wickedly delicious Zin is temptation at the first sip. And that's not just our pride talking. Blame it on the Catholic school upbringing of brothers Michael and David, or their lust for hedonistically seductive wine. Our flagship Old Vine Zinfandel hails from the enviable Lodi appellation, where Zin reigns supreme. Here for 6 generations, we've given our souls to growing the finest grapes, so that saints and sinners alike can enjoy the 7 deadly Zins. Oh Lord, forgive us our Zins. Okay, hands off to the Michael David Winery, because that's a funny label. You're not supposed to pop it, but it's more satisfying for the listeners.
I know, that's why I did it.
It smells like red wine. To me, I don't know any better. Delightful pour.
Take that glass, sir.
Thank you.
Please to enjoy. Today we are drinking out of our Rancho Sisquoc Winery glasses.
There's a beautiful etched drawing of it looks like a barn or a farmhouse. No, it's a church.
Chapel, yeah.
It's a chapel, yeah, with 2 towers, because it's got crosses at the top. Seems appropriate for our 7 deadly Zins.
You know what I should have done is use
What?
an aerator to pour these. So this might be a little aggressive right now, but it's okay. All right, so this is a Zinfandel, a dark red wine.
Oh yeah, you can't even see
Very
the light
dark.
through it.
Nope. There is no light coming through. Around the rim, it's got a nice garnet color. You see as it spreads out to the edge of the glass if you tip it gently. Don't tip it all the way. Let's see what this tastes like. Oh my god. That was an intense first blast on the tongue there. Dark berry,
Yeah,
blackberry, blueberry.
there's something chemical
Wow,
in
really
there, too.
fruity. Chemical.
Yeah.
Explain. Chemical how?
At the end of it, it's got a little bit of a cigarette lighter bite at the very end.
Cigarette lighter.
Yeah, you know the Roncinol stuff you put in a Zippo?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's got that kind of a bite at the end of it.
I've never drank that before.
Well, that explains why you don't recognize it.
That's true. I'm having a hard time smelling it though.
I kind of like it. Normally I find Zinfandels to be sort of mellow compared to
Really?
compared to like Malbec.
Okay.
And this is more like drinking a whiskey in comparison, because it's got I can feel it when I breathe it in, you know what I mean? Oh, Dan's doing the thing where he aerates it and swishes it in his mouth. It's fascinating. I'm going to do that too. Oh, that makes it better. It makes it sweeter.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm so delighted by learning wine techniques, and Dan's just like, he's trying so hard not to laugh at me, because I'm such a
It's
I like it. It's good wine. It tastes like wine.
Thank you, Andre the Giant.
It's really good.
It's fruit. It's so fruity.
I like it. I would drink this.
But now it's dry. My first sip was just this explosion of dark berry. That's kind of mellowing out a little bit. Now it's leaving this very dry sensation on the tongue. Not tannic though. You know how when you have a real heavy red wine, like a real bold Cabernet Sauvignon, and it just feels like it sucks the moisture out of your tongue,
Yeah.
out of your mouth?
Doesn't feel that way.
That's a very tannic wine if it does that. That's not what I'm getting here. This is just dry.
You know what I enjoy about drinking wine with you is that, first of all, I don't think I experience half the things you experience when you get wine in your mouth. Maybe that's because you've done it more often and you've heard guys talk about it, so you've got more to look for. But I practice meditation so that I can be just kind of aware of what's happening around me. And when you take a sip of wine, there's nothing else in the world going on with you except your experience of that wine. It's like a meditation with drinking. So I am going to start drinking more wine because I really like drinking wine with you. I taste the blackberry now that you mentioned it. I took another sip and I can taste the blackberry. I'm going to try to be more mindful when I'm drinking alcohol now so I can taste those flavors. I had a beer. Ami and I and the kids ran a 5K last night, the OC 5K.
Oh, wait, last night?
Yeah, we ran a 5K.
And then she ran a half marathon this morning.
She ran a half marathon.
Your
this
wife
morning,
is crazy.
Yeah. And afterward, you could rip off there's 2 parts at the bottom of the bib, and you rip off one part, and they give you a free beer. And I should have remembered the name of this beer. It was the sponsor of the beer, but it was made with sea salt, and it was it was a very light beer. It wasn't something I would order at a bar. But it was so refreshing. It was like Gatorade after a run, only it was Beerade. It was so tasty.
Okay, so was that the only beer available?
Yep.
Okay, so you could probably look at that race's website and see which
I'll find out what it is.
Beer sponsored it, because that sounds interesting.
Was
it salty?
It was a salty beer,
but in a good way.
And it was it's hard to describe.
How interesting.
It was not a beer I would normally enjoy, but I think after the race it was delightful. All right, well let's
wow, I just want to take more of this wine.
Let's finish our...
God, it's so good.
What's in the wine? We're going to keep drinking our wine, and we'll be back with Act 3. Act 3 begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by the vengeful forces he disturbed when he seized the sword. This is a long, complex sequence in this film.
Right.
While the detectives and the crew of crime scene investigators are going through John Doe's apartment with a fine-tooth comb, the phone rings. It's John Doe himself, and he says he'll be adjusting his schedule in light of this setback.
Right.
He proceeds to take Somerset and Mills on a ride through the last 4 sins. So they go to Wild Bill's Leather, where the proprietor shows them a photograph of a piece commissioned by John Doe. It's basically a strap-on bladed phallus.
Yes.
It's a hideous-looking thing.
Right.
And then they find the Lust crime scene. There's a blonde woman, the same woman they saw photos of in John Doe's apartment,
right,
dead in a massage parlor. She's been assaulted by the phallus blade that John Doe had made. There's a hysterical massage parlor customer in the room. He's just absolutely shivering and screaming, and he claims that a man held a gun to his head and forced him to have sex with the masseuse, quote, quote, while he was wearing it.
Yeah.
And this is by far the most horrifying and violent of the murders yet, by a factor of 10. And Leland Orser... Oh.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Leland Orser. Talk about Leland Orser.
He's
absolutely
amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you start the scene. There's no ramp up. You start the scene hysterical and gibbering. And you stay hysterical and gibbering the whole scene. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
To Leland Orser, let's have a little toast. Leland.
I want to say that while this is probably the most horrific and violent of the murders, but there is nothing shown on screen.
Right.
When you see the murder victim, you see legs sticking out on the bed, but the 2 detectives are blocking any horror that you would see on camera. And I think that is such an amazing choice by David Fincher, and he does it again at the end of the movie, where the awfulness is in your head, and you swear what you saw in your mind was on screen.
Fincher's an artist.
Yeah.
And he knows how to use your imagination against you. And he knows that your imagination is more horrible than anything he could show on a screen. And it's brilliant. So that night, after the Lust crime scene is discovered, we see Mills go home and hug his wife and tell her how much he loves her. And Somerset, who lives alone, can't sleep. And he reaches across to his bedside table and smashes his metronome. This is such great symbolism. I mean, this case has shattered the rhythm of Somerset's life.
Ooh.
And he has to find a new one. The next morning, they are called to the Pride crime scene, where they find the body of a woman whose face has been disfigured, her nose has been cut off to spite her face. Then in the second most surprising moment in this film, John Doe shows up at the precinct and turns himself in.
Right.
You've never seen a movie where a serial killer kills 5 people and then shows up and says, yeah, that was me. And there's one cinematic cheat that Fincher admits to, which is we've stayed with the detectives the whole time. There's never been a cut to the villain in his lab doing mean stuff.
Right,
but
which was intentional.
Right. But in this scene, Somerset and Mills arrive at the precinct, and then the camera shifts over and you see someone get out of a cab and start to cross the street. It's the only time
Correct.
we come out of their POV, and it totally works because you're like, what? Yeah, so he claims there are 2 more bodies, and he'll only reveal the location in person with Mills and Somerset. And if they agree, he'll sign a full confession and plead guilty right now.
Yeah.
And this is the most important part of the film because Richard Schiff
Yes!
plays the defense attorney. So,
There was a TV show that he was on for a couple of seasons, I think.
Yeah, the East Side.
Can't really remember. The West Wing.
The West Wing. That's right. That's West Wing. I've heard of it.
Beloved.
He's so great. And he's so
Television
uncomfortable in everything he does. And he's so great in this scene where he's just like, I hate my client and I hate you and I hate everyone. One of the best scenes in the movie. In a war movie, you have the pre-battle scene where the soldiers are gearing up. But in this version, Somerset and Mills they're in the bathroom shaving their chests so they can wear a wire.
Yep.
And they make this joke about if I shave off a nipple, workman's comp.
Covered by workers' comp.
So, it's a great scene, and they keep dropping hints about Tracy. There are 2 hints in the Richard Schiff scene. He says, "My wife doesn't even have cable," and then in this scene, he says, if I keep coming home late, my wife's going to think something's up."
Yep.
And it should have keyed us off to something that's going to happen, but I never noticed it the first time I watched the movie.
I don't think that that's true. How often in conversation do you talk about...
I don't know, man. It was 2 scenes in a row. I just think it's great. It's great when you can plant foreshadowing so that the audience can go back and go, oh, I should have seen it, but they didn't see it coming. Somerset, Mills, and John Doe are in the car driving out to the middle of nowhere. Somerset is trying to get John Doe to sort of talk about the crimes and unwind his philosophy and see if he can get something out of him. And John Doe is talking, but Mills is just disgusted by him.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt has all these great line readings.
Very quotable Brad Pitt scene here.
They arrive at this dilapidated trailer in the middle of nowhere. And in another great line, there's a dead dog in the road. And John Doe goes, I didn't do that. They're out in a field under these high-tension towers, and a van pulls up. And Mills stays with Doe while Somerset goes to retrieve the package and send the driver away on foot. Meanwhile, John Doe is telling Mills how much he admired him and how much he admired his life and his wife. His sin is envy. Back at the van, Somerset opens the box, and there's like a drop of blood on the flap. And then he opens the flaps, and he gasps and staggers backward. That is Morgan Freeman's gift, because we never see what's in the box.
Right.
David Fincher can't direct what's in the box. Morgan Freeman has to be all of us in his reaction, and it's unbelievable. And then we cut to John Doe, and he tells us it's Tracy's head.
Right.
So we can cut this if you beat me up after the thing. But one summer I interned for Morgan Freeman's production company.
Okay, here it is. I knew it was coming. Now it's time for Jeff Garvin actor moment.
No, this has nothing to do with me acting. I was an intern at his production company, so I got invited to the summer barbecue or whatever. Right? Morgan Freeman shows up, and my whole body goes numb because I'm in a backyard with Morgan Freeman, in casual clothes with his earrings in, and he's holding court. He's holding court. He got behind the buffet line and he's serving people. I mean, just what a ham, a lovely man. And I was able to sort of like inch up to a conversation he was having, and he kind of looks at me like, who the heck is this kid? And I said, I just have an actor question for you, and then I swear I'll leave you alone for the rest of the party. And he's like, all right. And I said, how do you prepare for something like the head in the box scene? Like, how do you prepare for pretending to see something that you didn't know was going to be there? Like, how do you do that? And this was a question that I really wanted the answer to as an actor. I'm going to get the juice from the master. And he goes, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, How do you not know? You did it better than anyone's done it. How do you not know? And I said, well, were you happy with it on the day? And he goes, nah, not really. And when you saw the film, did you think it worked? He goes, you just got to trust the director. They know what they're doing. And I was like, that's the most disappointing answer I've ever gotten in my life.
And he even says that had he the opportunity to do it again today, he still isn't sure how he would get to that point to make that moment really convincing for him.
Coming back to the whole vengeful force, now it's Mills who becomes the vengeful force. At the urging of John Doe.
Definition of.
Right? At the urging of John Doe, who has meticulously planned everything to lead up to this moment.
Yep.
Mills empties his gun. He fires until you hear the click, and his sin is wrath. And this act completes John Doe's masterpiece.
Yes, it
The
does.
bad guy wins.
Yes, he does.
And we're thinking, I've never seen anything like this. What is happening? Brad Pitt's performance in this movie is so startling and heartbreaking.
Oh, God! Oh, God!
And there's a single flash of Tracy's face and then bang.
Yeah.
And McGinley is California yelling into his helicopter headset, somebody call somebody.
Yeah,
and
just call somebody.
Yeah, and in retrospect, it's kind of funny, but in the moment, it's shocking and disturbing, and it works.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you would say.
Yeah.
That was what I had as the road back.
Wow. Whew. That was a long road. Well done, though. I don't disagree with any of that. That takes us up to about 2 or 3 more minutes left in the film.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
And there are still 2 segments of the hero's journey. They're very short, and in some cases, they are a single line of dialogue long. So the penultimate section is Resurrection, where the hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living a changed person. As you stated, the antagonist wins this particular confrontation. I feel like the resurrection is kind of a perversion in this film. John Doe, during the drive out to this remote desert location, he tells Mills and Somerset that what he has done will be studied and talked about for years, which is absolutely correct. And you think about the history of real serial killers. You remember the serial killer, not the cops who caught them, not the prosecutor who won the case and put them away.
Yeah.
You remember the atrocities committed by that serial killer.
And sometimes not even the crime, just the name.
But that's what the movies are made about.
Yeah.
That is kind of the only moment of resurrection that I see where it's really the villain who, by virtue of being discussed for years to come, is the one who is resurrected, not the police.
No.
Officers who No, you're disagreeing with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pulling the disagree.
Pull the disagree card.
Interesting.
Do it.
Interesting thought.
But,
the
but
hero
while
is-
you talk, I'm going to pour myself some
please do.
more of this
By the way, it's sitting nicely with me.
Seven Deadly Zins.
The head change from one glass of 7 Deadly Zins is quite nice. So I'm pretty confident. The hero is purified by death. Somerset is purified by John Doe's death. Somehow, this horrifying series of murders has changed him. Maybe, like Mills says earlier in that scene, he felt that rush again. Or maybe he realizes he can't walk away and let guys like John Doe go free. Maybe Mills's influence has made him see that cops can make a difference. But we know Somerset is staying on because the captain asks him, where are you going to be? In the last spoken line of dialogue in the movie. And Somerset says,
Around. I'll be around.
his career, his life as a cop, is resurrected by this process.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah. And that's a callback to a line of dialogue when Somerset is going to the library. He hops in a cab and the cab driver says, where are you headed? And Somerset says, far away from here.
That brings us to Return with the Elixir. Freedom to live. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. Now, this is a grim story. And the Freedom to Live sequence here consists of a single line in voiceover. And Morgan Freeman is the undisputed master of voiceover. Somerset says,
Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part.
this completes Somerset's heroic arc. He started out a cynic and a quitter, and now he's staying to fight the good fight. And the credits roll backward because nothing is what you expect in this movie. I mean, what a stunning conclusion.
Yeah.
And satisfying in its own right in a movie where it could have been completely unsatisfying because the bad guy wins.
Right. Yeah, and a character that you kind of, or at least, okay, I'm not going to speak for anybody but myself, a character who I came to identify with in Mills is completely destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me who I remembered more about from watching this movie in my early 20s, I would have said Mills. He's the more identifiable character for a young person, but watching it now, yeah, this is Somerset's life. He's got way more invested. And Mills, he's now a widower, no children, no connection. He's a lot like Somerset was at the beginning of the movie.
That's it for this episode. Join us next time when we cover whatever our patrons vote on. We're going to put a poll up on our Patreon page. Patrons, head over there, vote, and you've got the power to decide what Jeff and I cover next.
If you like what you've heard, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Tell 5 friends about us, precisely 5, and speaking of 5, give us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you could give us a 7-star review, that'd be more appropriate for this episode.
Oh, wow. Good one. All right. If this show inspires you, informs you, or even if it just makes you laugh, go to patreon.com/Hero's Journey and learn how you can support the show and unlock some bonus content.
The Hero's Journey is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Sarzana with original music by Taylor Jordan. Thanks to Dean Effington for designing our logo. This episode, we sampled some distilled, brewed, or fermented shit from Oh! Dan bombed me with the script, you guys.
Had you not read that yet?
No, I did just reading it live.
Here, I'll hand the bottle over to you so you can
This
read
episode, we sampled some 7 Deadly Zins by Lodi. No, by
Michael David Winery. Good Lord, this went off the rails. Keep it going.
It's your line, 7.
Oh, all right. 7 is copyright 1995, New Line Productions, Incorporated.
Stop what you're doing, whip out your phone, and follow us on Twitter @Heroes Podcast. Like us at facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast, and check out our show notes, including links to what we've been reading, watching, playing, and drinking at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time.
Journey on! Journey on! Oh, God!
Well done.